it's an exhibition, and we'll hear more about that from the artist herself, and I would like to invite her here with me, Lisa Borgiani, a young artist from Verona, in Italy, and she has brought us these very interesting works, and she will tell us more about that. And together with Lisa, we have Francesco Spagnolo.
I started this work, this photographic work, photo painting work, between 2005 and 2009 in Berlin, at the memorial. And the idea was to describe the feeling I had in this memorial, which is a very particular place with no entrance and no exit. I don't know if you have never see it. It's a very strange place where people can just pass by, or they can think they can cross it. And so what I've tried to do here is to catch people's voices. There were kids laughing, playing, couples were kissing, and yeah, the idea was to catch the voices with my camera. Then one day, the director of the Jewish Museum in Bologna, in Italy, came to my studio to see the works, and he wanted to do an exhibition there. But he asked me to create. He asked me to first create the future of the memorial. So at the beginning, I didn't know what to do. So I thought that one idea was to bring more light inside the work. And I started doing some video, putting a light inside the videos, and as a symbol of hope, of strength. For me, the future was the light. So you will see the video on the screen there, with this light, and the image of the memorial slowly dissolved into the light, becoming a big, strong light. Yeah, we like the idea, so we will do the exhibition.
This work is about art and the relationship between art and memory. And while if we think of literature, that is pretty obvious what can be done, what has been done, starting from Proust to Primo Levi, which we mentioned before, different type of thing, but for visual arts, it's probably different what can be done and what Lisa has done.
Can I elaborate?
Can you give us your insight?
Explain the secret. Well, I mean, I think yes and no. Visual arts have the benefit of not having to work in a sequence. So you can have, as we can see in this video, you can have multiple layers of past experience all coexisting, and that's exactly what we see in these photographs. There is a depth and a presence of different historical moments all at once. I mean, a way to look at these, the photographs, to write from, is really to look at them in terms of history. What we see is Lisa's work, and very much her hand, her work of painting over photographs, and the photographs are photographs of a place, which in itself is not memory. It's trying to memorialize. It's trying to, it's actually it's the opposite of lightness. It's a very heavy place. It's made of stone, big, heavy stones that try to come to terms with yet another form of past, of historical past. So there are all of these layers, and I think in a way that's German art theory from the 19th century that says this. Lessing and company explain how visual arts really can relate very well to history by bringing different moments of history together. But my little story was about well, essentially the question is what are we talking about, or what are we seeing, what are we dealing with when we deal with memory? And so a little autobiographical story, but this past weekend I was in New York City and I had a lovely lunch during Shabbat, during the Sabbath, on the Upper West Side, and I was staying with a family that is Italian and American, and the children are native in both, well, of course in English, but that doesn't count. That's too easy. They're native in Italian and in Yiddish, and both languages were spoken at the table. But eventually the conversation went very much into memory and into archives. That's the one place where memory is. So there are institutions that are created to preserve memories. And we're talking about how archives these days have changed, but the old days, and many Italian archives are still in the old days, are places where memory is really kept very tight, and it's really hard to get in. And archivists sit on history and memory, and on only to those happy few that can really have access, will dispense access to memory. So the anecdote was of the archives of the YIVO Institute, the Institute for Jewish Research, that maintains the memory of Eastern European Jewry, and is based in New York City. And so somebody was telling the story of how this one old-time archivist who would not let anyone in, one day a reporter from the New York Times came in because they had to write a piece about concentration camps and about the Holocaust, and said, I need a photo of a concentration camp. And in a little bit of a sadistic gesture, the archivist said, which one? And the reporter was lost. He had no clue. He was on an assignment, he didn't know what he was really talking about, and so of course by default he said Auschwitz. And the archivist replied, now I'm embellishing the story, but it's okay, it's fine. But replied, oh really, you want Auschwitz? All right, okay. And then brought out one carton, and then brought out another carton, and then another carton, and then another one. And after a little while, the reporter was completely submerged by tens of cartons full of photographs of Auschwitz. And that was just Auschwitz, of course. He could have asked for another camp, and many, many more cartons from other camps would have come out. So there is a heaviness to memory, and there is a lightness to memory, and the two of them. I don't know if there is a moral in what I was saying, but in a way there is. There is a labor of memory. And then there is this very interesting attempt to memorialize and in a way serialize memory. You were mentioning since 2005 the Italian Cultural Institutes around the world, and I remember actually being in the old Italian Cultural Institute here in San Francisco in 2005 to launch the first official commemoration, and it becomes a routine every year. We do this, and but actually it's not just a routine. If we go back to the history of the day that brings us together, which in Italian is called Giorno della Memoria, Day of Memory, but in English is referred to, as you were saying earlier, the Holocaust Remembrance Day. There was quite a debate in the Italian Parliament about which date should this day be celebrated on. And eventually the consensus was for January 27th, as you said, the day of the liberation of Birkenau, when the Red Army enters Birkenau. But the first proposal that preceded the Italian law by several years was by a member of Italian Parliament, Furio Colombo, suggested that the Italian National Day of Memory should fall on October 16th. October 16th, as it was remembered a few months ago, is the day in which the ghetto of Rome was raided. The lists of Jews living in the ghetto had been maintained by the fascist police. They were passed on to the Gestapo. Jews were rounded up and they were brought to the station and then shipped off to the camps. So again, there is a sense of heaviness, and the idea is, okay, so do we celebrate and commemorate the memory of something that's local or something that is more universal? In a way, the memorial in Berlin deals exactly with the same topic. Berlin is the epicenter of, just a few miles away, well, about a mile away from this memorial is a very, very important exhibition called Topography of Terror, which charts the very thorough work that the Gestapo did in Nazi Germany. But just a few miles away is the Wannsee, where in the lovely villa facing a lake, the final solution of the Jewish problem in Europe was charted and decided. And of course, Berlin is the epicenter, and at the same time, this memorial is called the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe. It tries to be something bigger than the local history, right? So it's both at the same time. So what has happened with the building of memorials, with this international consensus of having one day, January 27th, as the day in which we all ritually come together, even though, and it was in the Italian press this past week, there was a scathingly, very disturbing article by Marcello Veneziani, probably the most interesting, in this case frightening, intellectuals of the Italian right wing against the Day of Memory, saying enough with all this stuff. We're done with it, let's move on. And that was the nicest thing that the article said.
Actually, it's an interesting, sorry to interrupt,
please.
It's an interesting question whether it's more appropriate to celebrate or to commemorate rather a liberation or something, or the raiding of the ghetto, which is
yes, or a crime.
Or a crime, a negative or a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has happened with all of these attempts to sort of make memory institutional is that it's something actually absolutely phenomenal. And I know it because even though I've left Italy 10 years ago, I still, a few months before January 27th, my email inbox fills up with projects and artists around Italy, artists and musicians and actors and writers all write and say, I have this idea, this proposal, this project, and so on. So this day of memory has become also a day that spurs artistic creativity. And that was very much in the mandate of this law to try and foster this. So one of the things we're celebrating here today with your work, I think, is really this sort of new wave of creative work that tries to deal with all of these layers and this heaviness and this very specific kind of memory, and also very global phenomenon. It's a lot of work. I think we're all very impressed with what you're doing, because you're carrying a big load and you're delivering it from Verona to San Francisco all the way. It's a long journey, but it comes from far away, and it's delightfully, also played and accompanied by music. So can I go back to this theme of light, because a lot of what is said about the Holocaust very much employs the metaphor of darkness. Right? one of the great memorial narratives of the Holocaust is Elie Wiesel's Night, right? And there is a just to stay with titles, there is quickly in my database, but I can in Darkness there is a recent movie, Polish movie about the Holocaust in Poland, In Darkness, and there is a phenomenal interview with Stengel, who was the commander of the Treblinka extermination camp, that also the title has the word darkness, and we find it over and over again. So another way to understand your use of light is really kind of like a strong opposition against darkness.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think that gives me the energy to fight against the darkness. It's a reality. It's a fight. You want to win, and you try to make the light stronger than the darkness is, you know.
Was it this, the technique you used here, was it something you worked for since the beginning of your artistic activity, or is it something relatively new?
Actually, I've started with the photography 8 years ago. But then after 1 year, I met a painter, and we've worked together for 6 years. So we combined two media, the photographs, and then he painted on my photographs. It was mixed media done together, so we had two signs on the same work. And then that's how we started, and then how I started with the painting. And then when he died in 2011, then I continued with the same technique. Not all the time, it depends. Sometimes it's the photo, and then sometimes the video. It depends on what I want to reach. The aim. I use everything to reach the point.
Can we hear the music?
Oh, you heard it again.